Elbow and arm structures. The skeletal detail below shows the broad lower end of the humerus from which two bony prominences emerge, the condyles L, A2. These are part of the joint which articulates with the lower arm bone. The inner condyle L is remarkably extended, while the outer condyle A2 is somewhat rounded and more visible when the elbow is flexed. The central protrusion of the ulna is the olecranon, B, visible as an elbow projection. The small rotating head of the radius is seen as a pit when extended against the supinator mass, but as a projection in elbow flexion C. The drawing above displays the skeletal elbow and forearm forms against the musculature of the upper and lower arm and hand. The dominant bone protrusions which create surface stress can be seen here. The head of the ulna, D, appears at the outer wrist, and the small pisiform bone, E, rests at the baseline of the palm. Side plane of wrist and little finger. This drawing of the little finger side of the hand shows the wrist and the head of the ulna into views. The top view illustrates alignment of the ulnar head with the palm knuckle of the little finger from both top and side planes. The pisiform bone can be seen under the head of the ulna. The lower drawing shows these forms with the hand-tombed palm side up. Note that when placement of the little finger knuckle and palm is known, all other knuckles on the dorsal side of the hand can also be determined correctly. Skeletal elbow and wrist projections. This multiple action drawing illustrates the necessity of knowing underlying structure and surface stress. Note the 5 skeletal projections of elbow and wrist, which become apparent under the stress of the positions shown. These are elbow, olecranon, projection, A, inner condyle projection, B, outer condyle projection, C, radius head, D, and ulnar head, side plane projection, E. See if you can locate other anatomical landmarks in the hand and elsewhere. And styloid process. On the inner wrist line lie the radial eminence and the styloid process, which correspond to the ulnar head on the outer wrist line. The schematic at top shows how the radius develops in a marked extended mound. See arrows followed by the reverse curve of the styloid spur. The metacarpal bone of the thumb emerges from this juncture of the radius with the carpals. This area also helps define the side plane of the arm higher up. The snuff box. Note the triangular depression high in the top of the palm, A, shown in this thumb side dorsal view of the hand. This hollow develops when the thumb is extended outward and upward, an action produced by two thumb muscles, the extensor pollicis longus and the extensor pollicis brevis, and aided by the abductor pollicis longus. The tendons of these muscles noted here, the extensor longus, B, extensor brevis, C, and abductor longus, D, form the taut side walls of this depression, while the high radius, E, closes the cavity at the top. This depression is known as tabatiere, meaning snuff box, possibly derived from the habit of French and English gentlemen placing snuff in this hollow and then inhaling it. When the hand is flexed downward, and the wrist is arched, the convex surface of the lunate bone becomes apparent. Note arrow. In this position of surface stress, the array of lower arm and wrist protrusions can be seen under a taut skin and can be easily defined by touch. Finger tendons in action on the back of the hand. The grouped finger tendons, known collectively as the extensor digitorum communis, combine to form an elevated ramp rising to the wrist bones, shown by the arrow in the upper drawing. Generally, these tendons blend on the dorsal side of the hand. As the tendons course over the knuckles of the palm, they become explicitly visible, especially under stress above and below the palm knuckles. This is shown in the middle sketch by arrows pointing down. Also note how the knuckle plane becomes markedly triangular above and below the knuckle capsules as the tendons ride over the knuckles. When the fingers close in tight compression, as shown in the lower drawing, the outer appearance of the taut tendon and finger shank appears somewhat like a miniature flexed knee and lower leg. The ball of the thumb, thenar eminence, is the largest form on the underside of the palm, shaped like an egg, as shown in the upper palmar view in the schematic to its right. It is notably variable as it flexes and closes toward the palm. It will flatten when lying tightly flexed against the index finger, but will elevate and expand when the thumb rises and begins to rotate inward toward the palm, as shown in the drawing at lower right. Hypothenar plateau. Opposite the thenar eminence is the flatter, more elongated hypothenar plateau noted by arrows on the little finger side of the palm. This is seen from the side plane in the upper drawings. Wedge-shaped, it rises narrowly from the little finger metacarpal pad and swells upward to the wrist. The drawing below, little finger side up, shows the higher thenar eminence on the other side of the deep trench in mid-palm. This mid-palm trench, marked by broken arrows, is a unique landmark in the hand, for it centrally divides the palm, running from the tip of the longest finger to the apex of the palm at the wrist. Even beyond, it ascends the forearm on the midline tendon of palmaris longus. Fingertip and finger shank pads consistent with the wedge shape of all fingertip forms. The thumb pads, marked by arrows in the large drawing at left, form an isosceles triangle. This is true for all other fingertips as well. The pads on the finger shanks, seen in the drawings of the open palm, are somewhat lozenge-shaped, yet are lightly creased at the center because of the deep flexor tendons running the length of the fingers. Note the variations of fingertip and finger shank pads seen from these two different views. Stresses and energy flows when the hand is in motion or performing an activity. The skin is stressed in the direction of the action, responding to the stress in the same way that clothing responds to the action of the body. Note the arrows expressing the spiraling swings of the fingers in the drawing at upper left. Follow the backward stress as the thumb surges forward and note the creases at the wrist. The arrows in the drawing at lower left express the skin tensions on the curved knuckle capsules and illustrate the conception of the drawing. They express energy flows in the dynamics that shape the drawing. The drawing at upper right shows the direction of stress on finger pads and the palm during bends and thrusts. Also note the webs between the fingers which connect the finger roots without slowing or inhibiting movement. D. Actions, functions, limits of movement. The hand is the most complex and variable form in the human body. No other form can respond with such extraordinary range and functional capability and with such ease and grace. For example, the separate fingers can perform an immense variety of actions, and the thumb, obliquely opposing the four long fingers in palm wedge, aids in actions such as grasping, prying, and supporting. However, not all the forms of the hand are as free to move as the fingers. Some forms are bound tightly by ligaments and have a very limited range of movement. In this chapter, we will look at the hand in terms of some of the many maneuvers of which it is capable. A. Boss X's. Q. Palm rotation. One of the hand's unique actions is palm rotation. It rotates in a 180-degree arc, a full half circle. The drawing at left, with thumb in, shows pronation, and the one at right, with thumb out, shows supination. This is a simple action with the arm outstretched, but not so simple when the arm changes position. Put your hand to your head, shoulder, back, leg, or ankle, and rotate it. Note the difficulty in different positions. When the palm bends downward with the fingers extended, the ultimate declination from the line of the forearm is an angle of 90 degrees, a right angle. The point at which the arm stops in the hand begins is shown by the horizontal arrow, the wrist line juncture of the arm, not the carpal line of the hand. When the fingers flex and bend inward to the palm, the angle of palm to forearm is only 45 degrees. The juncture point is shown by the vertical arrow. When the palm bends upward at the wrist with fingers extended, as shown in the upper sketch, the line of elevation from the horizontal arm will rise to an angle of 45 to 50 degrees. The vertical arrow indicates the point of direction change, yet when the fingers close or are tightly clenched, the angle of elevation from wrist to metacarpals is not affected. Note the correspondence of angles in lower and upper drawings. The reason the palm will not change its angle of elevation, whether the fingers are open or closed, is due to the tightly flexed elevators of the palm, the extensors carpi radialis and carpi ulnaris. When the fingers close inward, the muscle grouping of the finger extensors extensor digitorum flattens out on the top side of the arm, hence the space for muscle expansion is in no way inhibited. In fact, it is even greater because of the flexing of the palm elevators. Check back on the preceding drawing for palm flexion inward to note the difference. In that drawing, finger flexion creates an effective rise in the finger muscle mass of the under forearm, resulting in the inhibition of the palm flexors against the sizable central muscle mass. Fist closure. In the closed fist, it is important to note the correct orientation of the thumb in opposition to the fingers. In right closure, the thumb tip will abut the shank of the middle phalanx of the long finger, just below the closed knuckle. The line of thumb direction shown by broken arrows points diagonally from the place of middle finger contacts across the center of the fourth finger knuckle toward the intersection of the little finger palm knuckle. Inside and outside angles. The drawing here illustrates the swing of the hand from extreme inside to extreme outside positions. The hand is placed on a flat surface, palm side down, with the pivot position at 0. The broken line, A, continuing from the inner arm line, B, represents the line of the index finger in normal position. When the index finger line swings inward, C, the angle will be approximately 30 degrees from line B. When the index finger swings outward, whole palm of course, the angle will be 45 degrees from A to D. Thus the total swing of the palm from inside to outside will be an arc of 75 degrees from CWD. Side view angles seen from the side view. When the thumb lies relaxed and adjacent to the side of the palm and index finger, hold up your hand and observe. The angle of the tip thumb will be about 30 to 35 degrees from the vertical side plane of the palm and finger, shown by vertical arrows. The tip thumb is defined here from the angle of the fingernail, the planes of the knuckles, the phalanx, and the metacarpal. Note how this angle of tipping is consistent if the thumb is brought down, but will not hold if the thumb is brought inward or under the palm. Angles of the thumb. When the thumb is pressed tightly against the side plane of the index finger as shown at top, the thumbnail plane, as well as the top surfaces of the knuckles, will lie at a 90-degree angle to the top of the hand and the index finger knuckles and fingernail. Note the contraposed angles of the fingernails of thumb and index finger. The thumb is shown in complete extension in the lower drawing. Notice that at a full 90-degree angle, the thumb fingernail lies fully horizontal with the flat surface planes of the other fingernails. Also, at this point of maximum extension, the thumb and forefinger make a true right angle to each other. Thumb rotation. This drawing shows the hand from a 3/4 palm position. As the thumb swings out, the thumbnail plane rotates upward from a 90-degree vertical position at tight closure. Note vertical arrows, to a 60-degree position, middle thumb position, and then to a 45-degree angle. All fingers tend to show a general 90-degree limit of closure, knuckle to knuckle, from the thumb through the little finger. The sketch above shows the thumb pointed out 90 degrees from the palm line and then drawn down and closed at 90 degrees. Both positions form right angles with the index finger. The sketch below shows the index finger in tight flexion, producing a square comer at every knuckle bend. Note the 90-degree bends in the middle finger. Top view. The upper sketch, drawn from above, shows the thumb closed at a 90-degree angle, dipping below the level of the index finger. It will not go further down without breaking the 90-degree thumb closure. Also note the horizontal alignment of index finger and thumb. In the sketch below, the back fingers in closure also form 90-degree angles at each knuckle. Downward thumb rotation. When the thumb is extended and lying close to the line of the index finger, the maximum elevation it can achieve here is a position just barely above the level of the palm. The upper sketch demonstrates this limitation. As the thumb rotates downward, it will cross the index finger boundary at A. As it slips past, the thumbnail angle will be past the 90-degree vertical to 100 and 120 degrees. See thumb at B. In these extreme positions, the thumb will go into opposition to all the fingers. If the long fingers closen toward the palm at this phase of thumb opposition, see bottom sketch, the fingertips make direct contact with the thumb tip. Finger and thumb closure. When the hand closes into a fist, the last three fingers precede the index finger and close into the somewhat triangular hollow of the palm below the row of knuckles at the base. Interestingly, these fingers all seem to be of equal length as closure occurs, and the tips line up in the palm hollow. In the second phase, as the three rear fingers go into a tight flexion, there is little room in the palm for closing the forefinger. Any attempt to do so feels uncomfortable, but the thumb closing in opposition to the fingers creates a cradle and is folded in. When the index finger is locked into the enclosing thumb, its proximal knuckle will project beyond the line of the other knuckles. This projection is a marked characteristic of every tightly flexed fist. This 6-stage sequence shows the right hand going into finger flexion toward fist closure. In the various stages, the little finger begins folding down, followed by all the others in numerical order, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, with all fingers coming together in a graduated spiral formation. The thumb is the last to close. In phase 1, upper sketch, the palm is overstretched, but the little finger bends slightly. In stage 2, just below, the fifth and fourth fingers are bending in. In phase 3, center right, the bending is more developed. Phase 4, Center left shows fingers 5, 4, and 3 beginning to overlap the palm. In phase 5, lower right, the 3 rear fingers are definitely in, while the index finger begins to curl and the thumb moves inward. In phase 6, lower left, closure is complete, yet not tightly flexed. The thumb has begun to press toward the little finger knuckles. To observe the opening of the fist, go back in reverse order. This drawing demonstrates how the index finger is virtually a prisoner of the thumb in fist closure. Note how easily the last 3 fingers of a closed fist can flip out from the hollow of the palm, while the index finger stays locked into the thumb box. Try the action on your own hand and fingers. Do you notice which finger flips out first from the closed fist? The long middle finger. This follows the rule that the first finger to close is the last to open. After looking at the finger closure sequence in the previous drawings, the sketches here show open finger variations. In the upper sketch, the index finger opens in a pointing gesture. The thumb is closed on the long middle finger, but importantly, the thumb tip is aimed at the transverse position of the little finger metacarpal palm knuckle shown by the arc of broken arrows. In the lower sketch, 2 fingers are open, while the thumb is closed on the middle shank of the 4th finger. Again, note the arc developing from the thumb toward the little finger palm knuckle. 3 finger opening with 3 fingers open. The thumb is closed on the middle phalanx of the 5th finger. Note the consistency of the transverse line of the thumb toward the 5th palm knuckle, with the tip of the little finger resting in the palm trench. 6. Foreshortening. It is impossible to draw the human hand accurately and artistically without an understanding of foreshortening, the overlapping of forms seen in spatial recession. Because there is scarcely any hand position which does not involve some form seen in deep space, in order to achieve a 3-dimensional rather than a flat effect, it is important to see and understand advancing and receding forms. A difficulty often encountered is the problem of retaining the hand's rhythms, its flow, and its sense of unity when drawing it from angles of deep foreshortening. Because forms are seen one in front of, on top of, or behind another, or not clearly seen at all, there is a tendency for them to look bumpy, segmented, and abrupt. Principles such as overlapping, interlacing, spiraling, and tonal contrast to achieve depth are given here as aids to learning to draw the hands as a dynamic, alive volume moving in. Rod and ball forms of the